In a world that often feels like it's moving at breakneck speed, let us remember that silence is not only an act of restraint, but an act of profound strength. In choosing silence in these 5 situations, we open ourselves up to deeper understanding, connection, and self-awareness. Let's embrace the power of silence, knowing that it is often in those quiet moments that we find the most profound wisdom. Silence as strength. Silence is often misunderstood as passivity or weakness, but in truth, it is a powerful tool that requires strength to embrace. It is easy to speak in the heat of the moment, to react impulsively to external stimuli or emotional triggers. Yet it takes a different kind of courage to choose silence, particularly when every part of us wants to respond. In those moments, silence serves as a conscious decision to hold space for ourselves, to reflect and to consider our response carefully, rather than being swept away by my emotion. Silence is not about suppression, it is about control. It's a decision to pause, to withhold judgment, and to allow clarity to rise naturally. In a society that often values immediate action and words, silence requires an internal strength to resist the urge to fill the void. It's a form of self-discipline that involves not just withholding words, but also emotions, so that our actions are aligned with our deeper intentions. When we choose silence, we are actively resisting the external pressures to conform or react in ways that may not serve our best interests. It's easy to get caught up in the noise of the world, to feel compelled to respond to every situation, but silence offers the opportunity to step back and assert control over our environment, our emotional state, and the way we communicate. In those moments, we are allowing ourselves to move beyond the immediate impulse and into a space where we can choose the most thoughtful, intentional path. In fact, silence can be a form of communication in itself. It can be an invitation to listen more deeply, to observe without judgment, and to be fully present in the moment. It takes strength to be present in silence, particularly when it feels uncomfortable or when others may be expecting a response. The power of silence lies not in what it says, but in what it allows space for reflection, understanding, and intentionality. It's a sign of inner peace, where we no longer feel the need to prove ourselves or rush into action. When we embrace silence as strength, we unlock a deeper capacity for self-awareness. In these moments of stillness, we confront our own thoughts, fears, and insecurities without the distraction of external noise. This introspection builds emotional resilience and encourages us to respond not out of reactivity, but from a place of grounded clarity. By choosing silence, we affirm that we don't need to engage with everything that comes our way. This empowers us to act from a position of strength, rather than from a place of obligation or reaction. Anger is temporary. Anger is a powerful and visceral emotion, often arising in response to perceived injustice, frustration, or hurt. It can take over quickly, clouding our judgment and making it difficult to think clearly. In these moments, we may feel compelled to act immediately, whether through words or actions. Yet what we often forget is that anger is, by nature, temporary. It is an emotional surge that peaks and then fades away, like a storm passing through. When we're in the midst of anger, it can feel all-consuming, like the only emotion that matters. But if we give ourselves the space to pause, we begin to notice that the intensity of the feeling eventually wanes. In the heat of anger, we might feel an urgent need to react or retaliate, but this impulse often leads to regret. The things we say or do in anger are frequently fueled by a desire to protect ourselves, to defend our ego, or to restore a sense of control, but those reactions are often disconnected from our true intentions. Anger may feel important in the moment, but it rarely serves us in the long run. Understanding that anger is temporary allows us to approach it with more awareness. Instead of reacting immediately, we can choose to sit with the feeling, allowing it to dissipate. This gives us the time to reflect on why we are angry and whether the response we are contemplating is truly aligned with who we want to be. Often, when we give ourselves that time, we realize that the issue causing the anger is not as urgent as it first appeared, or that there is a more constructive way to address it. When we act out of anger, we often react impulsively without the time to process what we're truly feeling. It may be the desire to be heard, to assert control, or to express pain. However, by recognizing that anger is fleeting, we can find the space to identify the underlying emotion, whether it's hurt, fear, disappointment, or a deep sense of injustice that is really driving our response. In this way, anger becomes a signal, not something to be acted upon immediately. It alerts us to deeper emotions that deserve attention and care. Over time, we can cultivate the ability to recognize when anger is taking over and make a choice to pause. It's not about denying the emotion or repressing it. It's about giving ourselves the opportunity to step back, acknowledge the emotion, and understand it before we allow it to dictate our behavior. By doing so, we regain control over the situation and are better equipped to handle it with wisdom and clarity rather than through the reactive lens of anger. Choosing silence prevents hurt. Words, once spoken, cannot be undone. They have the power to heal, to uplift, and to connect, but they can also wound deeply, leaving scars that may take years to fade. Choosing silence in moments when we feel the urge to speak impulsively can be a protective act, not just for others, but for ourselves as well. The words we speak are often shaped by our emotions in the moment, whether it's anger, frustration, insecurity, or fear. In these times, we may be tempted to lash out, to criticize, or to defend ourselves, but in doing so, we run the risk of causing hurt that lingers long after the words are said. Silence, in this context, becomes a shield. It gives us the time and space to consider the impact of our words before they are released into the world. When we hold back in moments of emotional intensity, we create room for reflection. We can pause and ask ourselves, is what I'm about to say truly helpful? Is it a response rooted in kindness, or is it driven by my own frustration or pain? Silence allows us to consider the consequences of our actions, both for ourselves and the people we care about. In relationships, especially close ones, it's easy to slip into patterns of communication where we speak without thinking, letting emotions dictate our words. When we're hurt, we may want to retaliate. When we feel misunderstood, we may respond with defensiveness. Yet these reactive responses often perpetuate cycles of hurt and misunderstanding. Silence breaks that cycle. It prevents us from perpetuating pain through thoughtless words, allowing the emotional intensity to dissipate before we engage. Furthermore, silence is an act of respect in these moments. It demonstrates that we value the relationship enough to avoid saying things we might regret. It shows that we are willing to step back and approach the situation with a clear mind, rather than reacting impulsively. By choosing silence, we avoid adding fuel to the fire of conflict, preventing harm from escalating. In many cases, silence allows the other person to speak and express their feelings too. It shifts the dynamic from one of confrontation to one of listening. When we're quiet, we give others the opportunity to share their perspective without feeling interrupted or judged. This creates a space for mutual understanding and empathy, where the intention is not to win an argument, but to connect and understand one another's feelings. By choosing silence, we also protect ourselves. Words said in anger or frustration often carry an emotional charge that we may not fully understand in the moment. Once they're out there, we may regret the tone, the language, or the message we've conveyed. Silence allows us to process our emotions internally, so when we do speak, we can do so with a clearer head, ensuring that we aren't adding more emotional weight to the situation. Clarity through silence. In a world filled with constant noise, be it physical, mental, or emotional, it's often difficult to hear ourselves think. The pressure to act quickly, to make immediate decisions, or to have instant answers can cloud our judgment. Yet, in moments of uncertainty or confusion, silence offers us the clarity we so desperately need. It is in the quiet spaces between the noise that our true thoughts, feelings, and insights can emerge. Silence allows us to step away from external pressures and tune into our inner wisdom. When we're surrounded by distractions, it's easy to make decisions based on impulse or reaction. We may be swayed by what others think, influenced by societal expectations, or overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information available to us. But silence creates a pause, an opportunity to detach from the noise and give ourselves permission to think without interference. In those moments of quiet, we can hear our own voice, unfiltered and undistracted. When we take a moment of silence, we allow space for reflection, giving ourselves the time to process our emotions and thoughts. Instead of reacting immediately to a situation, silence helps us slow down and consider all aspects of it. It helps us weigh the facts, examine our feelings, and look at the bigger picture before making a decision. In this way, silence becomes a powerful tool for ensuring that our actions are intentional rather than reactive. We don't act out of fear or urgency, but from a place of thoughtful clarity. Additionally, silence can cut through the clutter of our minds. In the rush of daily life, we often carry a multitude of conflicting thoughts and emotions. This internal noise can be overwhelming, making it difficult to make sense of what we truly need or want. Silence allows these scattered thoughts to settle. It is in this stillness that clarity begins to emerge, offering us the insight to make more grounded, mindful decisions. Sometimes silence also provides the clarity of understanding another person's perspective. When we listen in silence, truly present and attentive, we are able to hear not just the words being spoken, but also the underlying emotions, needs, and intentions behind them. This deeper understanding can shift our perspective, allowing us to see the situation in a new light and respond more thoughtfully. In moments of inner turmoil, when we feel uncertain about a decision or how to navigate a situation, silence can act as a grounding force. It is in the absence of external influence that we are able to return to our true selves, to connect with what matters most. It offers us the space to strip away the noise and reconnect with our values, guiding us back to clarity and purpose. Silence is often seen as an absence, but in truth, it can be one of the most profound ways to show respect. In our interactions with others, the act of remaining silent speaks volumes about the value we place on their presence, their words, and their feelings. When we choose silence, particularly in moments of conversation or conflict, we communicate that we are not rushing to speak over the other person, but rather that we are giving them the space they deserve to express themselves fully. It's a powerful acknowledgement that their thoughts matter. When someone shares their perspective, especially in vulnerable moments, silence allows us to listen deeply without interrupting or immediately offering our own thoughts. Interrupting or jumping in too soon often signals that we aren't truly engaged in what the other person is saying. We're simply waiting for our turn to speak. By choosing silence, we signal that we're fully present, that we're not just hearing the words, but actively listening to the emotions, experiences, and intentions behind them.